Good afternoon. I am Oh Young-wook. Well, I'm so happy to meet all of you. Thank you for coming on a rainy day. Today, we are going to talk about book. I know we are not talking about games. And I'm not sure whether you know about our book or not. The title of the book is the 94 Korean games that we loved, and we published the game through Tumblr. We used the crowdfunding, and if we didn't have any problem, I would be here holding my book. But unfortunately, we don't have the book yet with us. So please understand that. So today we are going to have three speakers, including myself. SEYONG and Ki-Hyun are the ones who are next to me, but I will lead the most conversation today. So let me introduce ourselves first. I would like to talk about where we're walking and what kind of games that we want to talk about. We all are gamers. So when we selected games for our book, our experiences played an important role. So I wouldn't say that we are professional gamers, but if you understand us a little better, like what kind of games we like, you will better understand our presentation. So that's why I would like to introduce ourselves first. So my name is Oh Young-wook. I became a game developer since in 2006. I'm a game programmer. But at the same time, I am a researcher at Gachon University. Yes, hi, I am Jang Se-yong. I am in charge of blockchain game at Unopened. I made a 8-bit game last year. I am in love with retro games, and I like to play games in a limited unlimited environment. Hi, I am Cho Ki-Hyun. I am a senior editor at Monthly Gamer Z. I've been working as an editor for 22 years. Actually, that's about it. But I do also do some translation work, and I have written some books and magazines on game, and most of my work involved retro games. And yeah, about my gaming history. My very first game experience was with JAMX when I was really young. And I know that many people in our generation, in our age group, played Nintendo and IBM PC games. So actually, many of us studied English and Japanese or any other foreign languages by playing these games. But in the 90s, we started playing Korean games too, or games that are translated into Korean actually. So when I was young, I mostly played 2D games, and when I started playing 3D game, that was I think with Xbox console, Xbox game. When I was 10, I first played a computer game. But before then, I didn't really play any games at home. I had to go to gaming room or game stores to play stick games. So yes, when I was young, I played a lot of 8-bit games. I played a lot of Korean 8-bit games too. And when we had 16-bit games, I mostly played PC games than console games. And when I went to university and when I started working after graduation, I were really into games. So my job was actually related to games. So back then I played a lot of games because it was part of my job as well. Well, I was born in 1977 and I first used my computer in 1988. I was a fifth grader. And back then, the situations for my family was pretty good. And my friends were relatively rich too. So they had MSX, and I could see a lot of friends playing some console games too. So in the 80s, Korean people started playing games. They were exposed to console games and all that. And I was luckily part of the people who love playing games. So yes, I played some 8-bit games as well, and as well as 16-bit games. I played IBM-based computer games. I went to game stores, and I had my own Super Famicom too at home. So I saw all the changes involving the game in the Korean society in person. So I thought that games were really attractive, and that is why probably I'm working in this field now. And I think it was around 1992 when we first had the Korean indigenous computer game. So yes, I witnessed all that changes and development in person. Whoa, interesting. So this is the basic background of all of us. And this book was published about 10 years ago. It's the history of Korean games. And I think that this is the one and only kind of a book that is dealing with the subject of the history of Korean games. And editor Jo Ki-Hyun is an expert when it comes to the history of Korean games. So he was a very important author for this book as well. And I, myself, started to collect some data and information on Korean games. It was not exactly a collection. It was more like archiving. But luckily, I joined this project as well to write this book. So we had a lot of discussions together and wrote a book together. And editor Jo Ki-hyun, as I know, you have written a lot of stories regarding this too, even after the publication of this book. So could you tell me anything? Oh, yeah. what I've been working on for a long time is Perfect Catalog series. This is really a perfect catalog series that deals with a lot of subjects of the game industry, including hardware and software products. So this is basically an adaptation of a Japanese magazine. So we do have some articles from Japan as well. So I do translation work too. So when we first planned this catalog series for the Korean society, we thought that we should not focus on the Japanese market too much because it is not so relevant for Korean readers. So we increased the share of the Korean game sections, and it was successful. We collected a lot of data and made a lot of articles for Korean consumers, and it became a true catalog of Korean games in the 90s. So we were lucky. We had a lot of data and supporters. So we could share a lot of stories on Korean games. So this book is still available in the market. So if you're interested in, please go to the bookstore and find it. So let me tell you more about our book. So how did it all start? Well, I love this image because I believe that this image well describes how it all began actually. So it's a screenshot of a old retro game. So I first met Jang Se-young through this project actually. So I was so happy to meet you. So this was the beginning. We had a very interesting event. Well, this guy uploaded this photo with a title, "I'm selling all old Korean games for 100 million won." It made a big news and got a lot of attention in the market. Well, yeah, we do have a lot of games with Korean words, but long ago we didn't have Korean games. We had to play foreign games all the time, so it was just natural that game screens, game images, or games just do not have any Korean language. However, with 16-bit games, we started to see a lot of Korean games. So probably this collector collected all Korean games since then. So this collection was out in the market, and it attracted a lot of people's attention. And this collector actually contacted several firms to sell his collection, but it didn't work. So these games were sold to some game collectors in Korea. And the reason this guy was selling these games was to get money to operate his company. And he had a clear timeline. He needed money for a certain project, but he couldn't get money within the time frame, so he later sold these games to several collectors. But this guy said, He wasn't really sure why he had so many games.
고 그리고 영웅님 같은 경우에는
So he began writing some articles on why he collected all these games. So he contacted some people, that's Jo Ki-hyun and other authors of the book. So the collector who tried to sell these games were me, and when I contacted all other authors to write a book, they happily accepted my offer. So I was lucky enough to have them as co-writers.
마련해서 두 분을 모셔왔는데 이 패키지들을 일주일에 이제 다 없어질 거다, 사라질 거다.
And
책을 쓰려면 사진
well, I found these co-writers, but after meeting them, I had to send them all to other collectors, to buyers. So we photographed all these games before we send them.
We had a very tight schedule back then. Together, us three, the commonality that we had was about the enthusiasm toward game. We were completely stranger, but we share that sentiment. So if we are totally stranger, then we can get suspicious over one another, but we share the enthusiasm toward game, so we easily became friends. After getting phone call from Mr. Jo Ki-hyun, I thought that I shouldn't miss this chance. Journalist Joe contacted me to join this project. I'm not sure. I cannot remember clearly because we make a lot of phone calls. In case of myself, I write articles related to Korean games, so I need to have some materials to write some things. I can write, but text is not important. I need to have images, photos, screen captures, and so on. So to gather those kind of materials, I need to contact a lot of people. And even though I plan to publish a book, collecting those data is very difficult, so that's why I failed frequently. But a colleague here contacted me with all the materials already archived, such as text and so on, Mr. Chang suggested me to join the project. From my perspective, it was easy to accept because in case of text, I can write it, but in case of photos and other materials, I didn't have it. In order to have a good book, attractive book, we have to have photos and actual images of the things that we are writing, but Mr. Chang had that, so I jumped into this project. Let's talk about PC. In 2018, we began taking photo of these things because we realized that we don't have much time. We cannot prolong this project forever, so we began to taking photo at Mr. Chang's studio or office. At the time, I had another job, so I had to have a day off to have this photo shooting. We bought new lighting. We had to prepare. It must have been better if you could prepare in advance, but we had no other option. We wasn't sure what kind of books we were going to write. We just took photo first and then thought about the content we were going to write. And after buying some devices, we gathered again. But back then, we didn't have much devices. Before, I haven't thought of taking photos of the materials that I had, but after meeting these two guys, we decided to take photo. And in Mr. Chang's studio and office, we took some photo,
되게 일부만 그
but only some
찍어둔 게 있더라고요.
were left.
그거 같은 경우에 이제
Here
스튜디오,
on screen,
작은 스튜디오로 그때 이제 뭐
we rented a small studio and we
썼던 걸로
ordered
기억하고 있고요.
some games online through coupon service. We didn't have the list of items. We didn't have it. So while taking photo, we listed up the items that we had. Mr. Chang had a blue box with a lot of items. We took it one by one and took photo of each item. In the office, we had limited time because we have to go home and eat, so we unpackaged the blue box and took a photo of each item in the box. So these are the photos that we took back then. Looking back,
게임 사진들이 너무 많아서
there were so many games that we have to take photo.
이렇게 저렇게 찍자라는
So we didn't have any strategy or
그런
plan.
것도 없었어. 그냥
We didn't have time to chat.
거의 그거에만
We just picked out and took photo, took out and took photo and asked questions. Oh, you have it? Yes, that was the way we took
막 실물로 봤던
all the photos of these.
그날에 오면 투 같은 것들도 있었죠.
The epic games were included in the box,
처음 보고 뭐 그런
and it was my first time to see it in real life.
한다고요? 뭐 이런 느낌을 하면서 계속 사진 찍고
And I asked
눈물을 흘리고 뭐 이런
questions to Mr. Zhang. Were you really trying to sell this?
그런 거였죠. 이제.
안 팔리면 저 주세요.
And if not, then I'll buy it. And it's that like that.
그다음에 이렇게 사진을 다 찍어서
And after taking photo,
2018년에
it
패키지가
was
다 정리가 된 상황이었죠.
still 2018, and we completed making a package.
후에 이제 전부 다
In 2 months, we could took all the photo.
그래서 일단 저희가 뭐 요걸 갖고 뭘 어떻게 할지에
When
대한 계획은
we
따로는 없었던
We're
것
not
같아요.
sure what to do it with these, but the only goal that we had was to have a photo of all these collections. And after that, we had the pandemic going on.
계약이 됐다고 이제 장세영님이 먼저
Mr. Chang contacted us saying that we had a contract with a publication company, and we have a funny episode related to this.
출판사와 계약은
Until us three met with each other, we vaguely had a concept that we need to contact a publication company, but there was no real attempts being made. But I'm not sure whether I've shared this story with you too, but when we want to sign a contract with a publication company, we need to have a manuscript, draft manuscript, but we didn't do it that way. I just delivered and explained the concept that we had, and we wrote an email with the concept that we had, and the publication company guy contacted me. After signing the contract with that company, and I asked why he picked us, and he mentioned that he was a retro game lover,
라는 책이 그렇게 많이
and the history of Korean game didn't sold much.
판매량을 공식적으로 이야기하기는 좀 힘들고
It's difficult to tell you the selling figure, but
팔리진 않았네요라고 출판사분들이
some say that the record is okay, but sales record
않아서
wasn't good enough.
내면은
If
얼마나 팔릴까에 대해서는
we were not sure even back then whether this book will sell well or not.
이제 출판 쪽 많이 하시니까 네.
And Mr. Cho knows about this publication field. Yes, I belong to publication field, so
이제 책을 찍는다고 그러면
when we print a book, it's case by case, but in general, when we print the first edition, at least 1,000 books should be sold.
이제 특정한 종류의 취미 서적으로
But in Korea, it is very difficult to sell 1,000 books if the subject is related to very narrow theme.
1년에서 2년 사이에 절판이 돼 버립니다.
But in just 2 years, all the books sold out.
오히려 또 책이
And later on, some readers wanted to buy this who want to buy certain theme-related books, then there's a premium entangled to it. But
또 이제 맨 처음에 이 책을 시작할 때는 사실
at first, when we first started this project, we didn't have any draft manuscript or so, but
원고 쓰자 막 이렇게 하면서 시작을
we
했는데
were ambitious.
그때만 해도 저 개인적인 느낌으로는
I personally thought that
이 주제로 500부나 팔 수 있을 거라는 게 개인적인 생각이었어요. 솔직히
I
그때는.
personally wasn't sure whether this book will sell, and my target was around 500 books initially. But amongst ourselves, we talked that even though the book may not make money, but it will be meaningful. So that's why we started. After signing a contract, we had to publish a book. We had our own opinion, so we only had photo, but we didn't want to publish a photo book, photo album.
되게 이제 여러 가지를 쑤셔 넣으려고 했었죠.
We wanted to incorporate various
강세훈님 같은 경우에는 어떤
stories in it.
그때?
And Mr. Chang, what did you want to include?
이걸 원한다, 이걸 꼭 넣어야 된다라는 주제는 없었던 것 같아요.
There's nothing specific that I want to put it in, but
저는 이제 기본적으로 글 쓰는 사람이고
I am a writer, so I'm a text writer, so I wanted to put a lot of text in it.
이런 책도 그렇고 이제 이런 계열의
This
책은 결국은 도록이니까
theoretical book
될 수밖에 없는 거라 저도 맨
is
처음에
categorized as a catalog, so the main content is images.
우리도 알고 있는 게 있고 막 그러니까
But as we wanted to say a lot related to that image, then
사실 제가 낸 건데
we
경우에는 어떻게 시작이 되냐면
included a column in the book.
패키지하고 게임 관련 얘기들만 넣게 되면은
If we only talk about game-related issues, there are some uncovered areas such as the explanation on the time.
국산 게임이 처음 이제 94년
In 1994,
생겼을 때는 사실
the Korean game market was first created.
소개가 돼가지고 같이
And at the time, a Taiwanese game and Japanese game flowed into our market, and that had to be translated.
그런 시대
So if we don't describe the time setting of the or the background, then it was difficult to deliver the entire story of the game. So that's why we included mini column in the book.
같은 경우에는 개발자 인터뷰를 넣자면
And some, Mr. Chang wanted to include interview as well. There were some other books which dealt with the history of Korean games, such as play or Crafton book. There was a book related to Crafton, book related to Nexon, but it wasn't a historical record. It's more of a book on economy. There were a lot of online game company major studios who became really successful in the market, but there was no book related to the history of the game itself.
저희도 사실 그냥 막 쓰라고 꾸며내는 거 아니고 기억에 의존해서
We depended on our memory to write a book, but
그때 당시 개발자들의 기록을 남길 수 있는 되게 좋은
I
기회다라고 저는 생각을 했었던 거
thought that it's a good opportunity to actually have an interview with the developers who invented or created those games. So that's why I suggested these two guys to include interview with the developers. So it was unrelated to the catalog itself, but I wanted to really include those interviews so we could contact 9 to 10 developers.
넣자라는 아이디어가 있었는데
When we wrote the history of the Korean game, we also wanted to have that interview with the developers, but that time failed. But in this time, in this journal, we could have interview with the developers included in the book.
소재지가 파악이 되신 분들도 있고
Some of the developers, we could contact them because we had that information, but some other,
만들어내려 하시는 분들
we couldn't contact them.
이제 국산 게임 관련 글을 쓸 때 항상 문제가
So whenever we write a thing or articles related to Korean games, we need to do fact check, but to decide whether that's fact or not, we need to have an interview with the people who knows well about that time. To contact all these developers, we had to do some research on their personal information or contact information or so.
저는 대신에 이제 글 쓰는 거 미니 컬럼이 주로
But I couldn't do that, so I wrote the mini column, and these two guys did the interview with the developers.
게임 개발자를 가장 만나기 쉬운 직업은 게임 개발자.
The developers
어떻게 한두 달.
know developers, so I contacted my friends who are developers. So through them, I could contact the developers who developed the retro game.
보니까 이제 제가 실제로 알고 있는 것과 되게 좀 거리가 있는
So
같은데 서술되어 있는
a lot of stories were different from what I knew. Things were not the same as described on Wikipedia. So, well, I had to go through a lot of adjustment to make all the stories in line.
많은 분들이 좀 이제 그 궁금해하시는 분들이
And
많아서
many people asked how we selected 94 games. Well, in the beginning, we wanted to select 100 games.
어떤 식으로 고르냐가 되게 어려운
Then what
사실 누가 골라도 문제.
was the criteria? Well, it was not easy to select 100 games. It's hard to select 100 games. And we had a library or a picture of the collection made by SEYONG, so that was the beginning point. We selected games from them, and well, somehow we had to prioritize the games based on its importance or popularity. So we selected some from our collection, but we wanted to add other games, but we didn't have some data on those games. So we did a lot of work to select 100 games, but we couldn't make it 100. We were short of our target. Well, of course, in the beginning, the total items on our hands were more than like 300 games. But because each of us selected 100 games on our own first. So there were some games that we really wanted to include in the book, but we just couldn't find any proven data on the game, so we couldn't include them. And even if we don't have any data, we tried so hard to get more data from other people. We contacted so many other collectors to find the games that we really wanted. But it was really hard to get the data, or they were just so expensive. Collectors wouldn't sell them. And one of the games that I remember is Tong 1. I really wanted to include this game in our book, but I just couldn't find any collector who has this game. So if you know anybody who has this game at home as a collection, please let us know. We can still include it. So most of the games are the ones that we actually and personally played, but some games that were popular in the 2000s were not familiar with us. But if they were really popular by others, we studied them and included them in our book. And we use the term package game a lot, but from some point people started calling package game CD game. So we had some different understanding on this categorization of games as well. So I learned that younger people call these games CD games. So because we used different terms, we learned that people have different understanding of these games, so we had to study these younger generations and taste as well. And another game that was really popular in Korea was 머털도사. We didn't play this game ourselves because it was popular in the 2000s, but it was really popular among the younger generation. So, but anyways, we included this game, but we didn't have full understanding of this game like any other younger people like you. So that is one of the regrettable points that I have. And as we said, we tried to interview old-time developers, but because of the pandemic, it was so hard to interview them. We couldn't meet them, and I don't know, there were a lot of difficulties in communicating with them. Well, if we want to make progress, we have to meet and see each other in person, actually, but the situation didn't allow us to do that. So the development period or the writing period extended or prolonged. So in the end, we picked up or selected 94 games in total. So we completed the original manuscript in 2021, around May. And around the time, well, we completed the manuscript, but and as I said, we did have some delays, but it was not just our problem. Our publisher also faced a lot of difficulties due to the pandemic, so we had to just deal with the delay, but it was fine. And then we used Tumblebug. Because we needed money, we wanted to rely on crowdfunding. So the book will sell for around $20 or $30. And well, for that, if we can finance part of that through crowdfunding, it will be meaningful. I know that we cannot make big contribution. I did know that we could not make big contribution with this crowdfunding, but I wanted to help the publisher. And I was actually the person who thought that crowdfunding is something that we had to use because I knew that this kind of book would not sell so well because it deals with a very specific theme and it targets a limited audience. And I thought that crowdfunding can be a good solution for us because those with clear taste and preferences tend to make contributions through crowdfunding. So I thought that gamers or those who love game would support us. And after we decided to use crowdfunding as a means of financing, we had to have further discussion with the publisher, because for those who supported us through crowdfunding needs to be rewarded with some types of gifts or something. But all we had was just this book. So we didn't have any goods to give out. And well, I thought that making goods just for these supporters is kind of funny. And we wouldn't be able to make any goods using the photos of these games, for example, because of copyright issues and so. So we didn't have anything to give out for our supporters. Well, we wanted to make some goods with all these game images, but it wasn't easy because of the copyright issue. But anyways, this idea of using crowdfunding was brilliant because it went so well. So this was our first time using crowdfunding, and the publisher never used crowdfunding before too. But well, it made a huge success. Our target was 3 million, and as you can see, we overachieved our target. Maybe if we pushed further, we could have earned more. And I know that there are a lot of processes for this crowdfunding cycle, but we only had 2 weeks. And within these 2 weeks, we could find a lot of supporters. And still, we don't know who are all these people. It surely went viral somehow, but we don't know how. So of course, we used our social network accounts and channels to promote this crowdfunding event. But we are not influencers, so we don't know how all these people find out about this and decided to fund our project. We're so thankful, but we don't know who these people are, so well, that is something that I want to know.
So we overachieved our target and earned around 80 million Korean won. So it's a very theme-specific book, but we ended up having a huge success in the crowdfunding. So I think it's a very meaningful event. Do you want to share your personal impression? Because we reached around 80 million Korean won. How did it make you feel? These 2 guys had published their own books before, but it was my first time to publish a book, so I wanted to have my own book. That was why I engaged in this project, so it felt like a present to me, self-gift. Yes, it felt like a gift. I am very happy. The initial target was to publish in May, so we have completed writing the book, and the only remaining thing was publication. While preparing for Tumblebug crowdfunding, and Tumblebug manager asked whether we have any goods to give to the investors, but we didn't have any. But Tumblebook staff mentioned that if we have another catalog with the images that we couldn't include it in the book can be a good gift to others. But I think that was a good point. If we followed our initial itinerary, we could have the book published already, but the legal division of Tumblebook mentioned we have some IP issue. There is a risk that we end up having IP issues, so we had to make consultations with IP agency of Korea. We had to contact first generation PC game developers to ask the IP rights to use their IP in our book. But whenever we contacted the developers, they said okay, and they were very happy about it, so we could resolve the issue really easily. So if you wait a little bit more, then you will be able to see this book. About the GEMX journal, no, not GEMX, 8-bit catalog and Super Famiform book. The writers of those journals had to ask for IP rights to each of the writer, or now? I'm not the writer, I'm just a translator of that journal, so I can say what I know, but in Japan, those magazines, when they publish those kind of magazines, it's unrelated to IP rights because it's a book, right? But citation, it's only a citation. So they say okay to use the IP rights for the citation. So when making catalog, if that content is not related to illegal or negative articles, but in case of our book, in the catalog there is no text. The front page and back page of the game title are included in our book, so that's why the publishers thought that there can be some legal issue. On the crowdfunding side, we are exchanging the progress and we share the progress of the publication. So if you are interested, please check the crowdfunding site, and the book will come out in the world with no big difficulty. So it's difficult to mention the date, but yet still the book will come out. That we have some limitations. The content of the book has some limitation. We mentioned how we selected those 100 titles. As mentioned, it's 94 games were selected by 3 male, us 3 who are in their 30s. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, there must have been some female game players, such as Princess Maker 2, and we had an interview with the developer of Princess Maker 2. Could you share? At the time, the game players were mostly male, and the active game player back then were mostly male. So for female game or female user targeting game didn't get much attention. At the time when I had the interview with the developer, in case of Princess Maker, when doing the character design and planning, the guy was Akai Takemichi. In the interview that we had in the interview, he mentioned that in Korea, Princess Maker users were mostly female. And he mentioned that the game could have been popular in Korea thanks to female users. So we wanted to incorporate some female section in the catalog, but it was difficult for us to do because we are guys.
이제 수록되지 못한 게임들 가운데 저희
So the game titles which were not incorporated in our book, we review it nowadays. And one of that then title is Open Mind World, Strawberry Game,
딸 키우는 이제 육성 시뮬레이션
a
게임인데
daughter raising game.
꽤 많이 나왔고
And it has a lot of spin-off to that game. And it's very popular in Korea.
우리가 직접 찍은 게임은 아니고 아무래도 다루기가 좀 조심스러운 게 있고
It was difficult for us to write about it because we didn't play it, so we had to drop. And I note with much regret. So for those cases, if we can contact the players of those games, we will include those game titles as well. So please let us know. Do you have other stories to share?
트임의 통고 하나 있어.
Yeah, the thing that I mentioned earlier, Tongkwan. Oh, and I have something in mind too. Well, we defined the Fox Ranger was the very beginning of Korean game. But of course, there were games before that, particularly PC games. So there was one game, 풍류협객, Wind Ninja. Some collector uploaded a package image of this game. So there was a lot of discussion whether this game existed as a package or not, but we saw the image, the picture, so now we found the answer. It was a package game, but unfortunately we could get our hand on this collection, so this game was not included in the book. Well, of course, there are a lot of regrettable points and areas of improvement, but I think we did our best. If I do it again, I don't think I will make any better version of this. So this book wouldn't be perfect, no matter how hard we try, but we tried really hard and I'm content with the result. But of course, I will make more effort to make better books in the future if I can. And of course, we wanted to interview other developers who are not included in our book. One person that I really wanted to interview was the developer of Dear Side 3, but I didn't have a chance to meet him because he just denied the interview completely. So yes, well, here we are three on the stage, but we are not all people who made contribution to this book. We got a lot of support from our supporters, crowdfunders, and publishers, and many others. So I am really grateful for our supporters and helpers and our friends. And particularly when we had to deal with the interview process or IP rights issues, well, we did get a lot of help from many people. I was so grateful. And particularly, when we had to interview developers, well, it was hard to contact them and it was hard to get agreement from them. So we did get a lot of people's help for that too, so I am really thankful for that. I really appreciate all your support and help. So until we publish this book, I don't think we will make any new projects for now, but do we have any other future plans that you particularly want to mention? Well, I'm really into retro games. I made 8-bit game last year for JAMX. So I think I will work on this more in the future. So after publishing this book, I think I will study the history of feature phone games more because we don't really have data or information on this. So I think I want to study this and document the history of feature phone games. So if any of you are interested in this, we can cooperate, or you can share some data that you have. So please contact me. Well, in my case, I'm writing a lot of articles, and I'm still working on Perfect Catalog series. So yes, I will continue to write for the time being. And one thing that I'm interested in right now is that, well, I just realized the importance of photos or actual materials, image, or collection. We could publish this book because we have photos of this collection. But now I think that even without these images or photos, we can still talk about this in depth. So I believe in the power of text. So if I can, I would love to write a book about this without adding a lot of images. Well, in my case, I would like to continue my research.
웹진 게임 제너레이션 같은데 쪽에도 이제 제가 편집위원도 같이 참여하고 있는데 이제 최대한 많이 소개할 수 있는
Because I'm an editor for Webtoon Game Generation, I think I might want to make some special report on this in the future. And I am getting a lot of data and information on games in our society, and I'm making a database, a digital database. So I would like to expand this database and share with others who are interested in this in the future. So this will be the end of our presentation. Thank you for being with us.